Please welcome everyone to Sunday Sentiments.
Of course, this is a hate crime.
And if she's found guilty, then she has to face the consequences.
They normally end up killing some particular kinds of people.
It's a violation of human rights.
That's a very traumatic event.
So I just wanted to ask the panel about their own opinions on this topic.
Hello, Keshi. You are our panelist from Denmark, and on the 27th of March, we had a panel discussion with a very interesting story of 19 Syrian children who were in Syrian, not Danish children actually, who were in Syrian prison camps, and your government had turned their backs on them and said that they could not be repatriated. Is that right?
Yes, that's right, Shiko. Our Prime Minister was of the opinion that these children, their mothers had turned their backs to Denmark, so they did not deserve to be brought back to Denmark, despite the fact that there was a big discussion about the safety of those children and the risk of them being radicalized in those camps.
So can you give us a little background? Why were these kids in those prison camps? Why were their mothers there? What's the story again? I know we will show our discussion, but what's a brief background of the story?
A brief background of the story is that the mothers left Denmark, took their children with them because they wanted to join, I don't know, what is it called, ISIS? IS or ISIS, yeah. IS and fight, to be fighting with them. But then apparently they got rounded up by the authorities there and they were taken to camps, Al-Roj and Al-Hol. Those are camps, prison camps in Syria. And these are children, and there were some children with Danish connections, but their mothers definitely, they are not Danish, but they had Danish citizenship.
There was some, I read that there was some with Danish citizenship, yeah.
And some had their citizenship taken away because of this move to go down there to fight with this organization.
All right, so we hear that there's an update. Can you just update us? Because when we had this discussion, obviously the position of the government and your Prime Minister was, no, we're not doing anything to help those kids. They can't come back with their parents because their parents turned their backs on Denmark. So apparently there's an update. Could you please tell us what the update is?
Well, the update is around the 28th of May. The Prime Minister of Denmark went live on and gave a press statement that they were going to bring those children back to Denmark, the children with their mothers. And she said it was for the safety of the Danes that they must now be brought home, not because the government wants to.
Okay, and do you know how it is for the safety of Danes that they're brought back?
Well, what happened is that there was a fierce criticism about the government's decision not to bring these children from everywhere, but particularly from the supporters, the support parties of the Prime Minister's party, because here in Denmark it's a coalition government. The other parties that support them criticize her decision. So they created a task force in March to look at the possibility of bringing the children home. And that task force came up with a report that says that there's a new threat assessment from the Danish security forces, and that the government had previously refused to listen to the assessment of this security organization here, the Danish security police. They had earlier refused, but now new threats came up, and therefore this has influenced the decision of the government and the Prime Minister of Denmark to bring these children home with their mothers. But she made it very clear, and these are her words, it's not a decision we are happy to make, and I stand by every word I have said in this case. For the government's position is still that these women have turned their backs to Denmark, they are terrorists, and they have nothing to do in Denmark. But the reality has caught up with us. The situation in the camps has deteriorated, and therefore we have to make this decision, and at least for the sake of Denmark's security. It is for the safety of Danes that they must be brought home, not because the government wants to. She made sure to underline and to emphasize that.
All right, thank you very much, Keshi, with that update from Denmark. And now we're going to continue and just see what our panel discussed and their opinions when those initial news came out that the Danish government has said, no, we're not helping those kids because of their moms. Okay, thank you very much. And now let's move on to the session.
So the next story is a story that has divided Denmark, actually almost in half. It is a story of 19 Danish children or children with a Danish connection in Syrian prison camps. And the reason they are there is because their parents went to Syria to fight for ICE or Islamic State when it was existing. And then they are now there in the camps with the children. So what do we know about the children? The Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs knows of 19 children who are either born or have connections to Denmark or born to Danish citizens or former citizens. And they are at the camps, at the prison camps at Al-Hol and Al-Roj in Syria. These children are born of 6 mothers. 3 of the 6 mothers have been deprived of their Danish citizenship administratively. And the other mothers who are Danish citizens have been cut off from assistance from the Foreign Office. The children are between 1 and 14 years old. 9 were born in Denmark, while the remaining 10 were born in the conflict zone. The 10 youngest have no rights of citizenship because, of course, they were born out of Denmark. So this story has even the whole of, also the EU has gone in and said that we want those children brought home, and not just Danish children, but European children that are in these camps. And the reason being given is also the reason that the Danish security intelligence made from their assessment that these children are a security risk to Denmark if they remain in the camps, because they can be radicalized and trained to come to Denmark to commit acts of terror. And actually, right now, children are being stolen from these camps and being trained to commit acts of terror. So the question is, what should be the fate of these children? Should they be brought back to Denmark? The Prime Minister of Denmark has been vacillating on different points, but finally she said, yes, the children can be brought to Denmark, but not with their mothers or their parents who have turned their backs to Denmark. So that means then taking the children without their mothers or their parents or their guardians and bringing them to Denmark. Is that possible? What do you panelists think? What is the right thing to do?
I feel like it's kind of unethical to take the children away from the parents, but I do understand the reasoning for it, because they've already decided to leave, either to fight on the side of ISIS or to fight with the citizens who are fighting against them. But they still decided to run away to the country where they know that there's a lot of war, and they knew that they most likely wouldn't be able to return, or they may be expected to die. But I feel like if we actually do end up bringing the children back, they should definitely be going through like a lot of psychological evaluations and like meeting with psychologists like weekly or something, because being trapped there, like maybe even for all of your life, it's just horrible. Maybe they don't know that it's like bad for them, or maybe they don't realize how bad it is, but just thinking about it just seems horrible. I don't know. I feel like it's a very hard decision to make, and either way, you're going to do something wrong. You're either separating families or you're leaving somebody there who might be innocent to die in a war that they didn't choose to participate in.
Thank you, Shakira. Shiro?
I think this is a very complex matter. Whatever course they take will have very negative repercussions either way, because if you take the children away from their mothers, those children are not going to forget they had mothers. So there's a very good possibility of them growing up and actually becoming radicalized in Denmark because of that, and hating the government for taking them away from their family. But looking at it from an African perspective, for us, children belong to their mothers. They should not be taken from their mothers for any reason. At least in Kenya, they never do. And remember, we had a discussion about children being taken from their parents in hospitals, babies being taken away from their parents, and we all thought that it was unethical. And at least most of us, let me say, but I still feel the same. Children belong to their mothers. Let the mothers bring them up the way they want to. They don't belong to the state.
Thank you, Shiro. Actually, some psychologists say that some of these children are already exhibiting signs of PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, and saying that if you separate these children from their mothers, you will make their conditions worse, because their mothers are their support while they're in those camps. So to separate them is to make their whatever condition they have right now even worse. And that means a lot of work done to this when you repatriate these children, and then to, how do you call it, when you deprogram them from what they have been learning there in the camps. Yes, Shiko?
Okay, so this takes me back to the story about Shamima Begum, where we were speaking about, should she be allowed to come back to the UK, and we all said she knew exactly what she was doing. No, we all, actually, some of us said she knew what she was doing, she should be left there, blah, blah, blah. So now we have a case where the child didn't know what she was doing, they were just born in these circumstances. Are we just going to say, let's leave them there? I can see the issue with bringing the parent as well, or the mother as well, because this is obviously somebody who's a danger to the society as a terrorist or a threat to public safety. But then to just leave the kids there, this is one of those things you just don't know what to do. You know, you leave the kids there, you're leaving them in danger of death, being killed, of no life chances for something that's not their fault. You know, they didn't ask to be born into this world. I'll also, another point that one of our team members shared about kids in camps, the way they don't have a life. And she asked a good question. Why? This is to the ones who are born in the camp. Why would anyone bring a child into this world under such conditions? Why? Why would you bring your child into a war or in an area of conflict, actually pregnant and give birth? And I know there's other circumstances where maybe the person didn't choose, but for these ones who are radicalized and they're like, you know, I'm just gonna get a baby for whatever reason, why would you do that to your child? You know, so maybe the responsibility should be on the parent to, you know, live with that decision that they made. It's just unfair that the child didn't ask for it. I don't know what the answer is. I really don't know what the answer is.
Yes, thanks, Shiko. Actually, people have been accusing the Danish Prime Minister of turning her back on children. And then she says that the children are in a terrible situation, and she's sure the conditions in the camps are not suitable for children to be there. But you have people who have turned their backs to Denmark, their parents. So what I'm thinking is that it's like children are being punished for the actions of their parents, but actually these parents have actually failed their children, not the Danish government, because If they wanted what's best for their children, they could not have gone with them there. But again, children should not be made to pay for their parents' actions. So like everyone is saying, it's a very complicated issue, and it will be interesting to see what Denmark finally decides. But there's been pressure from all points, from opposing political parties. She's actually in the middle, because those who are against migration, it's actually become a political talking point, where we have parties in Denmark who run on anti-migrant sentiments, and then we have these ones who are more liberal. So the prime minister is there in between two camps. But this is a matter of people's lives. It's not a matter of politics and migration politics. It should be about these children. Does anyone else have a comment?
Actually, look at the comments, please.
Sarah and then Catherine, sorry.
Yeah, I wanted to make a point because I agree that the kids belong to the parents. That's true. But as a psychologist, I saw so many children that were with parents unresponsible, that were a real danger for them. You can see their behavior changing. They even get radicalized, but against their mothers and their parents. So sometimes we have to think about it, not just say they belong. It's my point. They belong to their mommies. Yeah, that's right. But if they don't, I don't know the connection or the relationship that they have with the mothers. If they're maybe they're a good mothers, or because if they are a danger for a whole state or for a whole country, that can be reflected on the children. So it's not fair. It's not their fault that they have this mother or they had this environment. So we also have to protect them. They deserve a good life, or becoming better, because sometimes parents don't know how to do it and are not a real good influence. And sometimes another parents that are not in the same blood are quite better to these children. But because sometimes this is not just about giving birth, it's also about taking care and loving. So it's a hard decision, I know, because we don't really know the whole situation. But if they are in that bad condition and these persons are a danger for a whole country, maybe we have to think about if they deserve a new and good life and a better life. So for me, I think we have to think in both parts, not just they are from the mother. We have to think also on them, because they can't decide for themselves. So we have we have to protect them also. So I think it's also good that they think on taking them and giving them a better life. But it's my point of view.
Yeah, Sarah, thank you for your point of view. But I will now ask you as a psychologist, because I think you're studying psychology. So, or you are already,
finished, yeah.
You have finished. So you are a trained psychologist. So as a psychologist, you think it is okay for children from the age of 1 to 14 to be separated from their mother? As a psychologist,
I think to make a decision, we don't have to just think on political things or like general. We have to assess the situation and see what's the relationship, because some of the teenagers from 10 to 14 are against their families. There are some of them that have a really bad feelings with their mothers, and they go against them and they get radicalized to the opposite, not because they fear their mothers for their life. And that also happens. It's not just the opposite. So for me, I think that the thing that they have to do is to talk with the kids, listen to the kids, and for the little ones, I think separating them for the mothers in that situation, it's not bad, but it's a point of view because many psychologists can tell you different things. But I saw so many children with parents that you just want to take them home, you know? So it's not always that they are the parents, and not everyone knows how to care about someone. So we have to think on every situation. That's my point.
Thank you. It's an important point from a professional viewpoint, because sometimes we may be acting emotionally or making, looking at it from an emotional point of view where these are the parents and so on. So it's also good to look at the psychological side and see what would be the impact of leaving these children in the camp with their mothers so that they are not separated, or what would be the impact of separating them from their mothers. So I like the point you made that a psychological evaluation should be made. These children should be interviewed, those who can be interviewed, to determine what will be best for the children. So that was a good point. Thank you. How about you, Catherine?
Yeah, I pretty much saying the same, because also in our countries we take kids away from their parents because the parents are unable to care for them, and sometimes we don't because we have this perception that we must not separate the kids from their families. And how often have we regretted this with children even dying? So it's about the risk to the children. For me, it's the risk for the children and their lives in the camp, their future. But on top of this, I think it's important to know, do we have the means in Denmark or in the other countries, it's not just a Danish issue, to actually have the right means of therapy to actually retrain them or to reprogram them. Because that, of course, will make a difference, that we actually know how to handle them and not to create a lot of, how do you say, that they don't turn out to be very much against the government because they felt they are separated from their families. Because obviously there are security risks when they're in the camps, but if we don't have a good therapy program for them, they could be a huge security risk for us here.
Exactly. Thank you, Catherine. Then we have Kirigo.
Yeah, I was thinking that everybody made some good points, and it's not an easy decision to make for the Danish government, but I'm thinking that they are damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. For example, if you leave the kids there with the mothers, they'll obviously become like the mothers and become a threat to others. And if they take them to Denmark away from the mothers, at the same time, I see them at some point in the future, even after that deprogramming, I can see them being like their mothers and also going there to go after their mothers and do the same thing as their mothers. For me, I think if there has to be a decision that's made, then remove the kids from their mothers and give them to the families. Obviously, they have families here. Most people have families here. Some, who can take care of them, and of course, the psychological help. If they don't have families in Denmark, then for me, I think then they should stay with their mothers. It's too bad that kids have to suffer, but on the other hand, you have. What can you do if they don't have mothers here and a family here? There's no need for them to come back here. On the other hand, if they have family here, let them come here or whatever, but the mother should not be allowed there, because they have to be examples of people who are given hospitality by a country and then turning their back and going to fight against the enemies of the country that have given them hospitality. There has to be examples of this. These mothers cannot be allowed to come back. And yes, I'm a migrant and whatever, but I feel when you're given hospitality, when you're shown hospitality, okay, I didn't come as a refugee, I came because I was married to a Danish man, but it's still the Danish government giving you hospitality to live here. You cannot then go and fight their enemies, and then you're allowed to come back like it never happened. they should not be allowed to come back even to a Danish prison. They need to just stay there. That's just my take on it.
Thank you, Kerigo. We have 2 comments in 1 minute. Shiro and Shiko.
I was just wondering, because I'm thinking, how really what right does a state have to take children away from their parents to give them a better life or whatever? And I think of, let's say, the Native Australians, the Native Americans, the Native Canadians. They have the history of taking children from their families and giving them to other families to give them a better life. It never turned out well for those children ever. They would have preferred to be raised by their parents. So the children should stay with their parents. And quickly, I was just thinking, Keshi, since you talked about or someone said what woman would think of bringing children into that kind of life, I just thought of that British woman, the white British woman called the White Widow, who's a known terrorist, and she's committed a lot of terrorist acts in Kenya. She's called Samantha Luthwaite. She has 4 children. She just goes around with them wherever she goes to commit her terrorist activities. And she's a white woman, by the way. So I wonder, will the British government go and look for those children and rescue them from that life? Just a question.
Thank you, Shiro. We also have the case of Greenlandic children who are taken from their parents and brought here to Denmark to be Danishized, and it didn't end well. So yeah, that's a true story as well. Shiko, the last comment? Or Shakira? No, Shiko and then Shakira, last comment.
Okay, just along with what Shiro said, it's interesting that, what's her name again, the White Widow? Whatever, though I don't even want to know, the White Widow. It's interesting that we haven't had any stories about let's bring those kids and rescue them. It's actually quite interesting. Also in terms of saving kids and giving them a better life, like you brought up, Keshi, Greenland, Australia, and New Zealand, it hasn't worked out well. And the reason I think it hasn't worked out well is because there are other layers that are not considered. So you take these kids away and you say, we're going to raise them in this life, and then they're met with racism, rejection, a lack of integration. So they end up being the other. And then what happens from that? They become radicalized. I'm sorry, but this is how I believe radicalization happens in the West. When second-generation migrants feel rejected, they're seen as the other, and they get resentful for not being accepted into this place where they've been brought up to believe is their home. And then they get enticed and told, we'll love you, we'll accept you, come over to, and then it's just a cycle. Really, it's something that needs like a deeper reflection. I don't think it's as easy as the kids, leave them there. I don't know what can be done. Kerigo said, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Either way, these kids could end up radicalized. It doesn't matter which way it happens. The resentment might be there for being taken away from their parents and then being rejected by this new society. Maybe we need to start by thinking of integration programs for migrants. You know, accept people and let them be integrated and accepted as part of a society instead of constantly being treated as the other. Then maybe that radicalization can work. But there's no point of rescuing a child from a camp. Oh, we'll give you a good life. And once they get there and they grow up, they're not accepted. They have no opportunities. They're rejected. Recipe for disaster, as we've seen with many other times when kids have been rescued.
Thank you, Shiko. Shakira?
Yes, it was just the last point about the White Widow that Shiro was talking about. I looked it up, and apparently there's rumors that she died in an airstrike in 2014, but then there's also rumors that she didn't die, but also rumors that her 12-year-old son is like survived and is training with ISIS. 12 years old. I just thought I should mention that because that's horrifying. But people aren't sure if she actually was killed or not, because there's rumors that she's still alive for some reason.
She's very evasive. She's like a shadow. So that was an interesting discussion, looking at it from different perspectives. And what Kerigo said about these children being rehomed with relatives could maybe be a solution, because that would solve so many problems. But at the end of the day, it's a complex issue. It has divided Denmark, and many people are chipping in. So it was interesting to hear your views. Thank you very much. And we'll say to our viewers, thank you for viewing this time. Please like, subscribe, and press the notification button so you can know when we put on a new video. And thank you, panelists, for sharing your time with us. We really appreciate it, always appreciate it. Thank you so much.